All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I am so excited for tonight's show. It is Tuesday. We are talking about March. I had to look at the date, 8th. It's happening so quickly, spring is. But tonight is all about the drive. And we're talking motorsports, different venues and avenues that we're going to look at tonight. Okay, we are going to have kick off first with our authentic car guy. And this guy goes way back 20 years, something, being the official guy when it says anything about cars. He runs from radio stations to TV stations. He's been a dean of a college even, just because of his expertise. So we're going to kick off with him. We're excited. And then we have another incredible guest that is definitely going to give you a whole perspective on the life and death of a motorsports racetrack. So I just kind of want to cue you in on that. But right now, I am Christine Campbell. I'm your host here for tonight at 9 at Night. We're every night from Monday through Friday, and every night has a different topic and some incredible, incredible guests. So I say, let's get started. All right, I'm so excited. We have Steve Ford here, and he is definitely the man about town when it's anything under the hood. And I'm so excited. He has spoken in many different audiences, and as well has taught so many people, not only with about his expertise, but his passion for helping kids. And we're going to mention that a little bit later. But right now, I can't wait to get Steve on. Welcome, Steve. Okay, I know you're there. Okay, we have Steve here. I know he's here. We just had a sound check. So there you are.
Hey,
You're in your garage.
I thought it would be appropriate, you know.
It is very appropriate.
Yeah, a car guy in a car garage. Hey, thank you for your patience. I was in your green room watching everything I could see, but it's kind of blurry because I'm like, you know, I guess I'm off to the side in the Zoom system. So I apologize. Now I understand I had to hit something to light me up, you know. So I'm really grateful to be with you, Christine, and I welcome, of course, you know, you're gracious to give me so much flattering introduction, but I want to qualify myself to the audience so that they would understand the humility that I have to have in the automotive world. You know, I'd love to be like, hey, yeah, I'm Mr. Cars, you know, and I know everything, but there's probably 30,000 individual parts at least in an automobile, and I know about 4 of them. And I'm kidding, but you know, I know more than that. But there's so much to know about the automobile. And as your upcoming guest would reveal, there's so much about car culture that each of us, you know, I think I might have said this to you or somebody recently. I want to say it's a famous quote. Maybe it'll be now, but it's a famous quote from the 20th century. Will Rogers, the famous actor and philanthropist and comedian and character, people could look up on Wikipedia if they were born in the last 10 or 20 or 30 years. I didn't know of him except in his movies and his visibility in the media later. But Will Rogers was a character in Hollywood and a really celebrated person. And he said a quote that I love as an educator, that he said, we're all ignorant, just in different subjects.
There you go. I am ignorant. Yes, I can say
that. You are role model humble, and you talk to all of us and lift us up like we walk on water or walk on spark plugs, you know, or whatever. In my case, I was originally an automotive technician and a car buff going into 15 years old, a high school auto shop. And I was racing motocross motorcycles and came from mini bikes and go-karts of that era. And I changed and worked on engines and parts and pieces. By the time I got to high school auto shop, I was just like a fish in water, diving into the water, and I've never left. But yes, I heard in your touching upon my background. First of all, you're very generous, but I want to qualify for you and the audience that yes, I was an administrator at a community college, a district of 3 colleges, San Diego. I was a dean over career technical education and specifically apprenticeship. So I just want you and the audience to know, I didn't betray my automotive roots and leave the hands-on world. I just became an administrator because I had been an automotive instructor. And without elaborating more on your precious moments, I will just qualify myself to that extent, but I'm a talkative mechanic.
Well, and it's a good thing because you've taught so many people and you've been invited to so many places to touch on many, many things. Now, I'm just looking at our 2 pictures. You're in Southern California with beautiful sun. You can tell I'm in snow white, cold country.
Well-preserved skin. Listen, you don't have to wear as much sunblock.
My lighting is horrible.
You look great. Listen, we have too much sun, and I was just thinking about you're up. Is it Mike Allen?
Yeah, Mike's going to be on soon.
Highly respected, and the birth and demise of Ontario Speedway. I want to hear this. We had Fontana Speedway, we had Orange County Drag Strip, we had Irwindale Drag Strip, we had San Fernando Raceway, we had many racetracks. Palmdale had I don't know if I mentioned them, had a racetrack. The real estate, because of the great weather we have, Christine, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
The great weather that we have results in real estate going out of control, so that Ontario Speedway, Fontana Speedway, Orange County Racetrack was top fuel, funny car, nitromethane, world-class racetrack. Now it's, real estate and supermarkets and mall and shopping and all that. So I apologize for California. We are too valuable for real estate, and you can't build a racetrack and know that it'll be here forever, because I'm sure Michael,
yeah, it's kind of like a secret what we're going to talk about, but I am so excited.
Sorry. Hopefully everyone just heard me group it into a bunch of different names, but it's my apology. It's kind of like the red ribbon around the car in the driveway, and I walk in the front door and say, "Who's that car for in the driveway with the red ribbon on it?"
I got the red car. We just need the ribbon. But you were gonna give us some tips here.
Yeah. You and I talked earlier about pre-show kind of things that you do as a professional and communicator in your role. And I mentioned to you that, there's all this quote unquote seasonal car care every year. And everybody hears it kind of like, rake your leaves and do your yard work and those types of things, the seasonal things that we do. But, summer is coming. And you asked me, from an automotive technician standpoint, about an angle I'm great with and happy to address. But I wrap this car care topic. Very cool photo, by the way. Are those my hands? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they are.
I'm just kidding.
I had you in mind.
I got to work out that right arm a bit and bulk up that bicep. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. But humor aside, the angle that I'd love to touch upon, even as it's seasonal and we're coming into March, April, May, and then summer travel, and you're traveling every day if you have an automobile typically anyway. But as certainly in the colder parts of the country where it's been snowing and blizzards, and the East Coast and the northern, they all know that they've winterized their car. And when summer comes, they change tires sometimes in the really severe areas where they need snow tires or what have you. And the oil change and things like this. But I thought I'd touch upon something with you a little bit different than just, hey, it's a seasonal change. Get out your antifreeze or your coolant. Let's double check this. And don't forget to check your spark plugs and whatever. That's all good. But I thought I'd touch upon that within the context of the maintenance-free car, right?
Okay.
I think that the thing I've never talked to anybody about on air that I want to talk more about, I feel responsible to talk about, Christine, is that, there's a guy like me, or a gal could be there as easily as a guy under the hood. And here are these little knobs and caps and wires and what have you. And it can be intimidating, you know, and it's pretty neat that we've gotten to a point where we have the self-serve gas station, and we no longer have garages where you drive into the gas station and talk to a mechanic. They're just not there. Now my point would be, they're selling, you know, soft drinks and coffee and flares and motor oil. And there's a person behind plexiglass or God knows what, you know, sitting there who has no clue about anything but a barcode, right, on something they're selling. And you know, they're doing great. We don't expect more of them. They're not going to come out and fix your car. They're not going to check your air pressure. If you need a jump, they'll wish you luck and give you, you know, a phone that you can use to call the auto club or something, you know, if you don't have a cell phone. No, it's a self-serve gas station. So are we deceived, Christine, to believe that our cars are truly maintenance-free? And the answer that you and your audience know is no, we're not deceived, unless we let them lead us to believe this farce that this, you know, maintenance-free automobile is really maintenance-free. What do I mean? I mean this: I'm mature enough, quote unquote, to remember when cars did need tune-ups. You needed an oil change every 3,000 miles or 4,000 miles. Today, some manufacturers are going 10, 15, and 20,000 miles. What's changed? Okay, what's changed? Let's move that off to the side. Spark plugs. I used to change them. I was so proud. I was so good at getting that wrench in there and spinning the socket, you know, setting the gap on those spark plugs and putting them in and telling the customer, you're good to go for another 10 to 12,000 miles before the next set of spark plugs. Now we have spark plugs that go, you tell me, Christine, do you know how many miles you get? I'm sorry, I don't mean to quiz you. We have typically new cars. I don't think, I'd like to stop and think, is there a new car out there that doesn't go 100,000? There probably is, with 40 or 50 different makes and models, and you know, 400 plus models out there in 40 or 50 different makes. There may be some vehicle that has fewer miles than that or greater miles than that, but let's just say everybody knows you don't have to have a tune-up every 12,000 miles. But that's the way it was in the 1970s into the 80s, when we had leaded gas. We didn't have catalytic converters until 1975 with the introduction of catalytic converters. Electronic ignition, transistorized ignition, that was this, you know, the space age of cars. Well, today we are a clock stroke from autonomous cars that drive themselves, which is all the buzz. So I'm not going to take a lot of your time on that. I think the audience hears about it, reads about it quite a bit. So where would I go with this? I would say, like that picture you're showing your audience and me on the screen, you still have an internal combustion engine. You still have brakes. They may be disc brakes, which are like a bicycle where you've got a caliper that clamps on to the rim of the 10-speed or mountain bike and slows the rim down. Disc brakes simply have a rotor behind your wheel that's spinning like a plate, and two little things clamp onto it to slow it down. Disc brakes were there in the 50s, 40s, and 30s. They've been there throughout these decades. They're just more common on cars today. And they have brake pads, which, like the soles of your shoes, they're going to wear down, and they're not maintenance free. Motor oil is petroleum. What's petroleum? It's petra, rock, oleum, oil. So what is oil in your crankcase? Underneath that, the top of that engine and the bottom, it's got rock oil in it. What does that mean? Is that just me having fun with you? Petra, oleum, petroleum? No, it has to be refined, filtered, cleansed, and then have the real trick with fuels and oils today are the formulations of them. Lower polluting gasoline, longer lasting oil. How do they do it? They add what's called an additive package to the oils that is absolutely chemical engineering at its best. If you can embrace fossil petroleum, and I hope we can get beyond it in our lifetimes, you know, obviously electrification and alternative propulsion, whatever it might be, hydrogen, you know, but we're working with fossil fuel right now, that rock oil. And essentially when petroleum is pulled out of the earth on a process that we see on oil fields, it's called what? Crude oil, which is a nice way to say rock oil. Crude oil is right out of rock. It's been distilled through tens of thousands of whatever the numbers that you want to embrace, you know, different views of history and timelines, but we get this. It's from eons ago, and it sits in the earth, and we extract it, but it has to go through a filtration and a distilling process, and then we get back to what I mentioned, the additive package. What is that? That includes friction modifiers that increase the oil's lubricity, the ability of the oil to be smoother. That means sometimes they're actually modifying the molecular chains, that stuff from chemistry and physics that we learn about, you know, the whole chemical engineering of the oil. They add a detergent package that keeps the oil sudsing, but in a controlled suds inside your engine to prevent, if you will, cholesterol, you know, clogged arteries in humans. Well, that engine you show under the hood there has many oil passages. It's got a cardiovascular system, just like we do. It's got little veins of oil. They're cast into either an aluminum block or cylinder head, or cast iron block and cylinder head, but they're cast into it to just like veins and arteries, and they allow oil to circulate all through the engine. Well, in the 20th century, engines were famous for sludging up, was the term. Well, what is sludge? Sludge is when as an oil gets older, the molecule chains lengthen. They literally take on, as they heat and get worn by the heat and friction and all the stuff that goes on in motor oil, the molecule chains actually get longer, like snakes. They're little baby snakes when you pour them in, like a bucket of snakes into your engine. As they get heated and old, the sludge is nothing but a bunch of long threads of molecules getting like a bunch of knots, like a ball of yarn. The oil literally sludges up and starts to braid and mix and gunk up. That gunking up is molecule chains intersecting and staying together. So when they have a detergent additive, it helps keep these long molecule chains floating around until you do an oil change. But that whole additive pack, friction modifiers to reduce the amount of friction, detergent additive, anti-scuff, anti-wear, heat and cold modifiers to allow that viscosity. What's viscosity? I look a 30 weight oil, please. What's a 30 weight oil, right? Okay, right? It's an index at 0. Okay, if you have a oil flow at 0 degrees, okay, that's not the weight of the oil. That's the temperature outside. But if you have a severe cold, and all the people in your audience who live in Minnesota or Illinois or Michigan, or, you know, they'd laugh and say, well, I'm up in Calgary, Canada, you know, got it. The colder you get in an environment, the thicker your milkshake gets. That makes sense? Yes, I'm kidding. What are you talking about, Steve? Well, it was chocolate. It was chocolate milk in Florida. It was chocolate milk in California. By the time I got on my supersonic rocket and went to Canada, I got off the rocket, I got outside, it was 30 degrees below 0. That chocolate milk's going to turn to ice cream. You know, viscosity is the thickness of a liquid going from vapor, potentially like water, to steam, or ice as a solid. In between the motor oil, when we say 30 weight or 20 weight or 50 weight, the thicker the oil, the higher the number. So if you were in the desert in Nevada, you would want like a 40 weight, perhaps, with that 110 or 115 degree temperature and a hot engine. You don't want that oil to be thin like milk. You want it to be a little thicker like syrup or molasses, potentially, but not molasses. What I mean is there's an optimal point. So I just want to touch on that. That happens to be viscosity. So just a side note, rock oil gets filtered, gets detergent, anti-scuff, friction modifiers, these other additives, and it becomes this beautiful, well, not necessarily beautiful to everybody, but it becomes a relatively clear sort of yellow-green liquid that once it's got 3,000 to 5,000 miles on it, it may look black, which brings me to another quick point on a myth. Is your dipstick turning black oil? Is that a reason to change it? And the answer is no. You can't tell the oil needs to be changed by the color of it, because it's intended to capture carbon that circulates through the crankcase. That's its job. Remember, it's got detergent in it. So it's going to turn black even in some cars after 2,000 or 3,000 miles, certainly older cars.
Now, a big question for you. Yeah. And I love this. I've never seen such a visual or heard such a visual of oil. It's like a movie. So you are doing an excellent job.
I hope so.
I love it. So compare that with synthetic oil.
Well, I guess we could do a half hour on oil,
Yeah,
and I
just a
will,
little
because you're
bit.
smart. You're great. You're great. Let me just say that I will come back to the seasonal topic here in the maintenance-free car if I can, or maybe
Yeah.
I come back another day. But let me,
Mhm.
for you in the audience, for synthetic versus conventional oil, I'm sorry to pop your bubble, but you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All oil is synthetic.
Now, wait
How
a
can I
minute.
say that? How
How
can I
can
say
you
that?
say that?
I'll
That's
tell you. It's an
okay.
easy answer, and your audience and you will get it. The moment you put in a friction modifier, the moment you put in detergent additive, the moment
Okay.
you put in an anti-scuff chemical in that oil, it's synthetic. It didn't
Okay.
come out of the ground that way. So how can I help your audience? Now, I know there are car gals and car guys out there.
Mhm.
No, I'm kidding. Carla says, is all oil synthetic? No. If you drive your car past 10,000 miles and it's supposed to have oil changed at 10,000 miles, I promise you, by the time it has 20 or 25,000 miles on that oil, it will no longer be synthetic. But all oil that has additive packages put into it, all conventional modern motor oil that you buy for modern conventional cars, as far as I'm concerned, is a certain amount synthetic. I know that I'm stirring the audience, but I don't want to say all motor oil is synthetic, because they're going to say, well, why am I paying extra for this
Yeah, they
unique
pay it.
synthetic
Yeah,
stuff?
you have to pay
No,
extra for it.
yeah, because you're buying a conventional motor oil like any other motor oil with maybe another 50% more additive package or
Okay.
75% modified motor oil. It came out of the ground. There are synthetic oils that are made for aviation and expensive, incredibly space probes and things like
Mhm.
this. They might be completely silicone and all these synthetic chemicals. It exists. There are full synthetic lubricants, but
Mhm.
the oil that you buy at your motor, the auto parts store, or your supermarket, or your fast food gas
Mhm.
station, that because you're a quart low, any conventional oil for a conventional car today is partially synthetic. Out of 100% of that quart of oil, maybe, and I don't know for a fact because I'm not a chemical engineer, but let's just say, Christine, for Carla watching and anybody else who's saying, how can you say it's synthetic? It's not synthetic, but it's partially synthetic. Everything you buy in motor oil is partially synthetic. When you say it's a full synthetic, what they're basically saying, and I think oil companies, I'd like them to watch and say, well, that's not right. Well, let me clarify. They might say, well, we have 40% of our motor oil is synthetic. Then I'd say, all right, then it's synthetic. And we call it a full synthetic because that's the maximum amount we put in. Okay. But the reality is, I'll say to them, well, tell me something, Mr. Sir or Mrs. Ma'am.
Mhm.
Is your motor oil, do you guys make the whole thing in your chemical operation? Oh, no, we actually take conventional motor oil. Well, that's my point. If you start with conventional motor oil and put in all these additives, we have made it synthesized. Well, yes, it is synthesized, but it's still based on a stock motor oil right out of the ground, just like all the other motor oils. It just has here I go, ready? Synthetic motor oil is better. Why? Because if you pull a trailer, if you're driving in Alaska or the North Pole, you're going to extreme cold, extreme hot, or extreme heavy duty, dragging that engine up a hill, pulling your 15 motorcycles and your kids' sleds and another motorhome behind it, and you're all these bad things you're doing. Well, if you get synthetic motor oil, it lasts longer because it has a stronger additive pack. It also has the most sophisticated chemical engineering to add friction modifiers and detergent and all this cool stuff that's 10 or 5 or 10 times more than a base conventional motor oil. But all motor oil that has a friction modifier in it, can we say friction modifier with me? Say friction modifier.
Friction modifier.
Dinosaurs didn't make the friction modifier. Crude oil doesn't have a friction modifier. A chemical engineer designed that friction modifier. That would be called a synthetic additive. So synthetic motor oils are better. They're different than conventional motor oil. They are better. They take extremes of temperatures and they laugh at it. They still provide friction modification and protection of all those hard parts that are moving in the engine. They'll be darned if that cold weather is going to be a problem. Push on through, because we're synthetically, we're power packed. That's
You
what
know,
it is.
yeah, it is absolutely phenomenal. And I can see why the youth absolutely loves you. You go to high schools, you go to colleges, young kids.
Yeah,
And
I make
so,
up stories.
yeah, I love it. And I'm still looking at, yeah, it's still visual, very visual. I
Well,
will
thanks,
never
but
see oil different now, the
no,
same.
yeah,
So what I
thanks.
wanted to, yeah, what I wanted to do was let's talk about your passion for what you want to establish with the youth. And I know you're going to come back in a couple of weeks and tell us how we can help, but can
Okay.
we tap on that?
Well, I'd like to, but let me, since I've teased the audience, I don't want to do a bait and switch. Let me just
Okay.
say something. I'll be very fast because I know that I'm getting excited about motor oil.
Yeah, I
But
know you are.
but let me be clear. Conventional motor oil has a certain amount of synthetic additive in it. Full synthetic motor oils, different manufacturers have different definitions, but they would all nod their heads and say, well, we'll give you that. If I tell you that they're better by virtue of their synthetic additives, they're still based on mineral oil or petroleum oil, and mostly petroleum, by the way. But they are better. They provide much better protection. Unless they're indicated as not advised for a particular car, most vehicles will benefit by a full synthetic, like Mobil 1 is a famous one, obviously. Now to the seasonal piece, don't forget, for every 10 pounds Carla uses synthetic oil, go get them. I hope you have stocks in those petroleum companies that you're, whatever oil company you're buying from. I'm just kidding, because you're going to pay more for it. Mobil 1, she says, good to go. I use Mobil 1. But I'm sorry, if somebody else sponsors me, I may use some other oil. I'm just kidding. Everybody knows Mobil 1's a great motor oil, and nobody will disagree, I don't think. But let me go to the seasonal car care real quick, Christine. Tire pressure is for every 10 degrees of temperature change, that is 1 pound of tire pressure change. So if you're driving a vehicle right now in Minnesota, and it's been 30 degrees above zero in Minnesota for the past 4 months, and now it starts to get to be 60 to 70 to 80 degrees as we go into summer, and you just drive the car, well, your tires are going to be likely overinflated. Because if they're inflated to 32 psi when they're cold, and they're real cold in Minnesota, right? If it's 32 psi at 30 degrees, when it goes to 70 degrees, how many pounds more will it be just by the change in temperature? Children, do the math. What is 7 minus 3? 4. So our tire has gone, without touching it, it's gone up 4 pounds when we went from 30 degrees to 70 degrees. So remember, check your tire pressure monthly, and certainly as the seasonal temperatures change. And in California or Western states, if you go from the sea level when it's cold on the coast, maybe up into the mountains where it's even colder, or it's hot on the coast, I should say. It's, let's say, 90 degrees at the beach, and you go up to the mountains where it's 35 or 40 degrees up in Big Bear or Arrowhead for people who know California. That's a temperature change, again, of like 40 degrees. Adjust your tire pressure. Seasonal, get your oil changed, check your coolant. A technician, a shop can check your coolant density and be sure it's durable by doing a check of the chemistry in your coolant if you want them to, or just flush it and have it refilled with fresh coolant if you have a vehicle that's due for that. Now, again, we come back to the maintenance-free car. I don't believe anything is maintenance-free in a car today. They have extended life coolant. Doesn't mean you shouldn't replace it at some point. You get to 100,000 miles with that coolant. It's been going about 100,000 miles. Won't hurt it to have it replaced unless the manual says you don't need to for 200,000. But I'd still, if the oil changes every 10,000, I'd consider changing every 8,000 or 7,000. It's still fun to take care of your car. So your owner's manual has a wealth of information, and I could blab on all day, as you could tell, on this topic, but I would encourage you to go through the checklist that each owner's manual has, and you can go online and just type in preventive maintenance checks. It'll remind you of most of those with respect to the time that you got, Christine. But the seasonal change.
I want to give you a hand. Yeah, I
Thanks.
need to. You awesome. Hey, we have one quick question,
Yeah.
and then we have 30 seconds. We can talk about your passion for kids.
All right.
Lori mentioned, does nitrogen in a tire change as much as it just air in it?
I don't want to speak without authority when I've never dealt with it. I've only read about it. I don't have nitrogen in my car tires. It's a more stable, the physical properties of nitrogen are much more stable than regular air in terms of its variance at temperatures. It's the molecule size of nitrogen, I want to say is larger, but I can't tell you for sure. I'm not a physicist on that one. But if your tires are leaking, you don't want to put nitrogen in because it's expensive to keep replacing it. But if your tires are stable, like synthetic oil, it offers advantages that are stability in a variety of temperatures and driving conditions. And it tends to keep, and tires they're porous even at a microscopic level. And the little valve stem, even though it's supposed to seal really well, it allows just a little bit of air to escape over time. I can't go beyond what I'm telling you. Nitrogen is an improvement. I'd yield to a tire expert to say if it's right for every tire. But I will one day want to try driving a car in my own and invest in the nitrogen over standard air. It's an improvement. There may be limitations where nitrogen shouldn't be used. I don't want to mislead anybody. It's just cool. I'd like to say I have nitrogen in my tires. I'll have to look into learning how I can tell you more on that. I don't want to say more because I don't know for sure. Okay. Hope that helps a little bit.
Excellent. Excellent. It's always a treat to have you on, Steve.
Thanks.
And we sure appreciate your wonderful expertise that you can add and bring to all of us.
My pleasure.
We have like 30 seconds, but let's just tap on what we're going to come back with a little bit more next week about your passion for helping the youth.
The youth, in 30 seconds, I would say, K-12 education, public policymakers, Department of Education, National Department of Education, at each state level, they don't have the money, they don't have the policies and the administration support for shop classes at a strategic vision level. Many administrators and policymakers like it, but they're not charged to do it. It's up to us across the communities in our nation to look at it like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We have to volunteer to help teach youth about hands-on tools and automobiles and the skilled trades. We in the skilled trades and community need to do that ourselves. And that's a powerful topic because we got a lot of car buffs in the nation. We got a lot of auto industry people in the nation. Like me, I think that they know more than kids know about cars, which means to me, we need to pass it on. How do we do it? We don't charge them. We don't take advantage of them in any way. We meet them where they are. And when they come to a car show or a Cars and Coffee, we need to show up there and start teaching them ourselves. That's it.
Very good. Oh, I applaud that.
Thank you.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. We can't wait to get more from the Car Guy next week. The website is right in front of you, thecarguy.com.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Christine.
Yeah, we bet. Sure appreciate you.
Enjoy your time with Mike Allen and the story of auto racing in the world of the 2020s. Okay.
It's amazing. Hey, thank you, Steve.
And Doug Stokes.
Well, he said not to be mentioned, but he is he's an
You mean
awesome
Doug
guy.
Stokes didn't want us to mention Doug Stokes because
No,
he got us to
because he said he's only in PR, but he is Mr. PR. I absolutely
he's the
love
best.
this guy.
And he's a role model car guy.
Yeah, he definitely is. So,
right.
Okay, Doug, we didn't say anything about you. Okay,
I didn't mention Doug Stokes, did I? Doug Stokes, I didn't mention him.
Yeah, I didn't either. Promise.
Thank you.
See
you later. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
So I'm excited. We have some amazing, we got a little commercial here we're going to play right now. And then we're going to be back right after this. Oh my gosh, I was talking and I didn't even have my sound on. I just
Oh,
saw
no problem.
pictures. So I am going to go back here because I definitely want to. Sorry about that, Mike. I'm going to get this slide back up because I want to talk about you. I think it's important that everybody knows a little bit about you. So you can, let's all sit back. Let's all listen a little bit more. Mike Allen, he's been 40 years in the Air Force. Okay, incredible. He's as an aircraft crew chief. He was an aircraft inspector. And then when you get the planes that fly up in the sky and they refuel in the sky, that's what he does. It's a KC-135 boom operator on that mission, okay, to refuel in the sky. And then he's a pilot. He went to flight school, but he retired in 2016, nearly after 40 years in the program. And since he was very young, he loved motorsports. And he, at a very young age, he grew up near Ontario Speedway. And this is what we're going to cover today and why we're doing it. But he was able to be involved in motorsports in so many facets, volunteering, being over the wall, that type of thing. And then also he has an incredible buff when it comes to history in the motorsports, been married 39 years this year, very excited. So now officially with my audio on, here is Mike Allen. Yay! So sorry, I thought that's embarrassing. And but anyway, I'm so glad that you're here because we have several videos. Mike is writing the book called The Ontario Speedway, and I'm going to let you tell us about the title and why you started to write it. So, and we're going to show some pictures.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you. I'm very excited to share my project. The Ontario Motor Speedway came and went within 10 years, pretty close to a 10-year period. It was the best speedway of its time. And a lot of current speedways can have items that can lend themselves to that one-time track. My passion for motorsports started well before I started in the Air Force. And I was a fan of the track. I used to go out there before I could ever drive a car. And how do I say this? You know, there are the kids that would hang out at the baseball field or the football field to see their heroes. Well, here I had this huge stadium and speedway show up right in my own backyard, so to speak. I lived in Covina, which was somewhat of a drive away, but it was pretty close in driving, about a half hour, 40-minute drive. Anyways, I would to see your heroes that you can only see on Wide World of Sports, and bear with my dating of that show. But now you had this mega stadium in your own backyard, and it had all the bells and whistles of all motorsports coming together on one track. Within those hallowed walls of that speedway, you not only had IndyCar, NASCAR, AMA motorcycles, NHRA drag racing, Formula One, SCCA Formula 5000 races. You had go-kart races. They filmed movies out there. They filmed television shows out there. It was a palace of speed. My book is called Ontario Motor Speedway: Racing's Paradise Lost, and it really is a testament to not only the speedway but the local region of Ontario and of Southern California. And how Ontario was impacted by the motorsport world coming to Southern California. Basically, the track was founded in the mid-'60s by a group of investors who wanted a Indianapolis of the West, as they say, and it actually was very close to the Indianapolis Speedway in design. Except for a few changes. One, it had just over a 3-mile road course based inside the speedway, somewhat similar to the layout that you would see at Indianapolis Motor Speedway today after they modified it for the Formula One races in the mid-'90s. anyways, go forward with that. Being Southern California, it was a hotbed of motorsports here, going back to the turn of the century. And my first 7 chapters, I base a lineage of why Ontario was so important. You had a variety of race shops, you had car builders, you had the hot rod generation post-World War II, you had Indianapolis roadster builders, you had Dan Gurney, Parnelli Jones, and the local were our local heroes, and the Speedway was a perfect fit. If you, as you see the photographs, there's one picture where the Victory Circle had the bricks from Indianapolis, and that was a somewhat a benevolent friendship between Tony Holman and the founders of the Ontario Speedway. The bricks were on loan from the track at Indianapolis. It somewhat different than Indianapolis in that it was wider. It had visual cues that you could see all the way down the back straightaway. It also had a drag strip that was built inside the a quarter-mile drag strip that was built inside the pit lane. The pits were so wide that they could drag in there and not drive on the main 2.5-mile oval.
So, you know, what's so amazing about it, and these shots, we have so many pictures, I can't wait to share. But the overview of this track was perfect. It was immaculate. It was 5-star plus with everything. But it only lasted a little over 10 years, and then it was done and turned into a mall. And that's like death. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's tragic in that how it was handled. And I would say that there were certain things that were out of the Ontario, certain things that were out of the control of management, but then there was some internal issues that occurred that caused its downfall. But I will tell you, let's back up here to the very beginning when the track was built. It was built with a Hollywood imagery. It had its connection with entertainment, sports entertainment, and on top of that, it was built in the late 1960s. This was an era of where we're going to the moon. We were reaching out and performing feats of daring, and America was the leading way of moving forward. We were recognized worldwide. This track was recognized around the world as the best track ever built for its time. Back to the track design. How did Ontario come about? Well, basically, these investors had acquired some vineyard land that was adjacent to the I-10 freeway. And at the time, there was nothing out there. I mean, they had some farms and they had the burgeoning Ontario airport that was on the move to expand. But basically, they didn't have too many neighbors nearby. So the options of encroachment weren't there at that time. As you can see through the pictures, it was a palace. And let me explain how it came about. So there was a purchase of approximately $5.8 million to purchase the lands. And that was conducted by way of a couple of gentlemen. One was the original president, and that's David Lockton. Dave was the wonderkind of business at the time. And he was a lawyer and was able to get the bond issues started to purchase the Speedway. This wasn't a one person buying it. You bought into a bond, and basically, let me get my notes correct.
Now these are the bricks from the Indianapolis, yes. Right?
Yes, yes. So basically, people would buy into ownership of the Speedway for the purpose of attending races, special events. And there was a very good proposal that the track by 1998 would be fully self-sufficient and without debt. And it was based on consistent management, also a consistent schedule. Let me expound a little bit about the Speedway itself. So it was designed by the same company that built Hearst Castle. And
wow.
yes, so it had some lineage to some of our California history here. And the track brought out the best and the brightest in design, in execution of the amenities that they had. They had a central concourse and a a restaurant that was part of the large building that you see in the photographs there. It also had a first-class suites that were designed for the enthusiasts that could afford to have a good seat in a good event. And then there was a flawless and beautiful and a very efficient press box that was located on the top tier of that building. So with that said, the Speedway's built. It attracted the Hollywood crowd on its opening day in August of 1970. Its first race was Labor Day. In that picture right there, you see David Lockton in a dark suit, and Tony Holman is right next to him in the convertible. So there was a lineage and a cooperative acknowledgement of both tracks helping each other somewhat. Indianapolis, without doubt, had its historical significance. This was a way of letting people see what Indianapolis could be and was. And then you see the hostesses that were in the that were part of the early years of the track. The hostesses worked in the restaurant as well as in the suites, much like you would find in a football or baseball game stadium today. It attracted the Hollywood crowd. In fact, its first offices were on Wilshire Boulevard in Hollywood.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And if I've got a brochure from that era, and it was the happening place to be. But let's go back to motorsports in general in 1970. What led up to this? At that time, motorsports was a very dangerous and very costly sport to be involved in. There were attempts to improve safety along the way, but basically the thrill of the race and the hero development at the time, drivers were moving from dirt tracks to corporate world environments, and this on track at Ontario lend itself to that burgeoning and developing world of professional motorsports.
And it's just, I mean, I'll tell you something about this track. It had everything. It had every type of racing track on there. In fact, the drag strip being in the middle, quarter mile was just in the front straightaway. That's unheard of. It's a 2.5 mile track overall for the main road racing, for the NASCAR circuits. But that drag strip is just a killer, just to have that on there.
I've spoken to many professional drag racers, and they said that Ontario was actually one of the first tracks they ever had a professional garage, and that the drag strip was a how do I say this? It was so smooth that basically it was up to the driver to select what lane to run in because they were pretty equal, and it was it opened in a sold out. Ticket were sold out, and Hollywood turned out. They had, and let me cite these names. Some of these names are no longer around anymore. You had James Garner, Paul Newman. You had Glenn Ford. You had John Wayne was out there. Scott Carpenter, the astronaut. The Gordon Cooper was there. It was a huge event, and it was the place to be. I remember the radio ads as a young kid hearing on KHJ in LA about the Ontario, the Big O was coming to Ontario, and they had a parade. They had first class movie stars, and we're talking about A-listers in a common Ontario city parade, which was Ontario. They just loved this. I mean, this was a huge event for them, and it was in their own backyard. So a couple of firsts with the track. The safety was paramount. You saw the wide angle of the track. It was on the drive line, the front straightaway and back straightaway were almost as wide as the pit lane.
Oh my.
And the seating was great. There was fan views all the way around the track. In fact, when Ontario was first proposed, before they started to dig in and build it, and then towards the beginning of the construction, the track was called Ontario Motor Stadium because the developers wanted to have a format of a baseball, football stadium environment. But then the Speedway kicked in.
So Mike, with your book, when do you plan to have that out?
Well, I'll tell you, this book has been a work in progress, and I started about a year and a half ago, and I had some great interviews with some very popular racers. And then unfortunately, COVID kind of hit and interrupted it, but it didn't stop me writing. I'm up to over 300 pages of documentation. I've uncovered over 5,000 official documents of not only the development, the construction, the operations, and unfortunately the destruction and termination of the track. So very all-encompassing.
Yeah, what's interesting, and it's sad because something so beautiful, and the only thing, there was not passion in the person that was leading it, because like you said, it was a collage of people, just like you had NASCAR France family, and Indy, you had the Holman family. It's basically where this was absolutely obsolete in that category, and that's why it's gone.
Right, and there were some outside things that occurred. They did not have a consistent management. There were, for lack of a better term, and that can be addressed in the book, there were some hiccups of opening and closure and scheduling issues. It had good intentions. I will tell you that the track was padlocked in late 1972, and Parnelli Jones and Tony Holman, with the aid of some of Parnelli Jones's business assistants and managers, rescued the track.
And that was after 2 years it opened?
Well, it was, yes, it closed in November of 1972, was padlocked. And there was no competition, no races at that time. There was a hiccup in that there was 2 NASCAR races run, in March of 71 and March of 72. There was supposed to be another NASCAR race in March of 73, but because the track was closed, it lost its scheduling line with NASCAR. And basically, there was no 1973 NASCAR race. However, Parnelli saved the track, brought it back up to operational standards, and it was a wonderful speedway. In midsummer, they started to have programs. They developed they had the IndyCar race. They had the AMA motorcycle races, and then they developed a series of schedules that were more solid. I wanted to address something about Ontario at the grand opening.
Yeah.
The grand opening in August of 1970 opened with a major media coverage. It was covered in all the periodicals, not just motorsport periodicals, but in Time Magazine and some other common organizations. It was covered on network television. The race was broadcast on cable. I didn't have a post event like on Wide World of Sports at the time they would have. So with that said, big ideas, big momentum moving into 1971. Dave Lockton developed the idea of having a Formula One race. There was a company called Quester, and Quester was a sporting goods and plastics conglomerate based in the Midwest. And he opened this, the gentleman that ran it, Sandy Grieve, ran this idea of running a Quester Grand Prix. Well, to qualify for Formula One in the United States, to have a race here, at the time, they wanted a somewhat of a test bed race. So they ran Formula 5000 with IndyCar sports car racers that were here in the United States. And some of those guys were very well known. Mark Donohue, you had Al Unser, Bobby Unser, AJ Foyt. Sweet Savage was just beginning his career, was racing Formula 5000 in the Quester race. Then you also had Formula One. So you had Mario Andretti driving the Ferrari Formula One, you had Jackie Stewart, you had Joe Seifert in the BRM.
It started breathing again and everything.
Yeah.
You know, and I've trained on all those cars.
Yeah.
So I know I'm seeing each car as it goes, and that you're talking about it, and just it's immaculate. We have Doug Stokes that we've been talking about, but he mentioned there are so many people who are just waking up to what we had at Ontario Motor Speedway. He says, I'm looking forward to showing this book to a whole generation who missed this place. I mean, it's legendary history, I would say. But you said, we got to end because we're at the end of the thing.
Yes.
Just a snippet. You said there happens to be an abandoned Air Force base, right? Just never know, right?
Well, I'll tell you, there was some talk, and I tried to find you that data up at Castle, up in Central California. There was a Castle Air Force Base, and there was talk that they wanted to rebuild a replica of Riverside Raceway, which would have been pretty good, you know. But I haven't seen that story bear any fruit recently. So, but you know what? Never say never.
That's it. Well, we'll just say that, and we'll definitely want you back when we get this book done and the snippets leading up to it. Yeah, we want to help Doug out and you out, and good people that are really making a positive difference in the world of motorsports. So thank you so much for being here. Sure appreciate you, Mike.
I just wanted to close out real quickly. Doug has been he's been my wingman since I started writing, since the first page. And I couldn't do this without him. I have a huge amount of people who have been helping me behind the scenes. This is my first book. I'm writing it like it was my last book, and I'm giving 100%. This is not my story. This is a tribute to those that participated, those who dreamed that track, and those who went to view their heroes within those hallowed walls. I hope that you'll enjoy it. I hope I'm very positive that I should have it wrapped up by, I wanted it wrapped up by last September, which was the 50th anniversary of the race. But unfortunately, due to some extra interviews and some data that just dropped on me, I need to make sure that I embed that in the story. I think that I'm looking at maybe June or as early as May to have it at the editors. And then the cutting, as they say, the cutting room floor starts. And hopefully I can keep the story as beautiful as it is laid out now. It will be a coffee table sized book, and it will cover the track from beginning to the end and then some. So I look forward to sharing that story.
Yes.
And I want to thank all those that have helped me with the interviews and helped me be a better writer. Thank you.
You're a hero. I mean, and in many ways. So thank you so much, Mike. We sure appreciate you. And we
Thank
are
you.
going to have Mike back. Yes, definitely. So we are going to have Mike back. It is time that we're at the end of the hour. It was so fabulous. I absolutely loved everybody that was on here, and I appreciate everybody that joined us. We are 9 at Night on air. It is every night, Monday through Friday, and it's just 9atnight.com. Thank you so much. And we hope to definitely get more about Ontario Speedway on the makings of this book. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.